At my wife's funeral on the bleakest day of my life, three identical little girls appeared. Their eyes so young yet so knowing held a strange familiarity, hinting at a secret that would unravel everything I thought I knew. I'm Liam Walker, a man who commanded Wall Street but knew nothing of this. Have you ever had your world completely flipped upside down? Tell me below. This is Liam Walker. Listen to my story. I remember the biting cold of that day, the kind of damp late autumn chill that seeps into your bones no matter how expensive your overcoat. It was Amelia's funeral held at Greenwood Heights Cemetery in Brooklyn, a place now etched permanently into the topography of my grief. The wind was a mournful wail through the gnarled branches of ancient oak trees, rustling the golden brown leaves that had begun to gather in mournful piles around her freshly dug grave. Above us, the sky was a bleak, unforgiving gray, a canvas perfectly mirroring the suffocating grief that crushed my chest, making each breath a shallow, painful effort. I, Liam Walker, the formidable Wall Street titan, the man known for his immense wealth, his sprawling business empire, and the sheer, unyielding power that came with being one of the market's most ruthless investors, felt utterly, completely insignificant in that moment. All the billions, the influence, the intricate deals I'd orchestrated with surgical precision, they meant absolutely nothing. I was just a man hollowed out by the loss of my anchor Amelia. She had been the only one who truly saw me. You see, the vulnerable, insecure boy lurking behind the meticulously tailored suits. The cold, calculated decisions, the unyielding drive that had propelled me to the pinnacle of my profession. Amelia was my sanctuary. The warmth that countered the glacial calculus of my professional life, the quiet laughter that dissolved the tension in my shoulders after a grueling day. We had built a life together, one brimming with quiet joys, shared dreams, and an aching, persistent regret that even now felt like a fresh wound we had never had children. That unspoken void had always haunted us, a silent sorrow we had learned, or perhaps simply resigned ourselves to live with. We'd filled our lives with travel, with art, with philanthropic endeavors, convincing ourselves that these pursuits were enough, that they compensated for the emptiness where a child's laughter should have been. Now, as I stood by her grave, watching her coffin polished to a mirror sheen slowly descend into the damp earth, a gaping chasm opened in my soul, a cold, vast emptiness that swallowed every flicker of hope. It felt as though a vital, irreplaceable piece of me was being buried, alongside her, forever lost to the silence. The funeral was predictably a grand affair. The creme de la creme of New York society had converged, a sea of somber, expensive black. I could spot the faces in the crowd, rival CEOs, senators, media moguls, even a few Hollywood types who'd been drawn into Amelia's orbit through her charity work. Some were there out of genuine sorrow, I supposed, a few true friends of Amelia's, their eyes genuinely glistening with tears. A man like me, a public figure, a symbol of power and wealth, was never truly alone, never truly afforded the luxury of private sorrow, except ironically in the most profound, aching ways that truly mattered. The isolation was absolute, even in a crowd of hundreds. As the solemn service finally drew to a close and the mourners began to disperse, a slow, murmuring tide of black coats retreating towards their waiting limousines, I remained rooted to the spot, my gaze fixed on the gleaming wood of Amelia's coffin, now rapidly being obscured by shovelfuls of damp earth. My fingers trembled almost imperceptibly as I pulled my expensive wool coat tighter around my frame, the cold biting through the thick fabric straight to my bones, an agony that mirrored the one in my chest. Arthur, my long-serving driver, an older man discreet with eyes that had seen too much and fiercely loyal to the Walker family for decades, waited patiently at a respectful distance, understanding as always my desperate need for this raw, private moment. I took a deep, shuddering breath, intending to turn and walk away, to sink back into the numbing silence of my car, when my eyes caught something utterly unexpected, something that pricked at the edges of my desolate mind, pulling me abruptly from my stupor. Three small, almost ethereal figures stood near the very edge of the cemetery, half hidden behind the gnarled, ancient trunk of an enormous oak tree. Three identical little girls, their auburn hair a shade like burnished copper, pulled back in neat, severe ponytails, wearing matching navy blue coats that looked strangely crisp and new amidst the solemn, worn black of the other attendees. Their faces were pale, almost translucent in the dim light, their expressions unreadable as they watched me with an intensity that seemed far beyond their tender years, an unnerving, focused gaze. They weren't dressed like the other mourners. While most wore designer scarves and expensive black overcoats, these children were in simple jackets and plain dresses, starkly contrasting with the opulent display around them. They looked to be about 8 years old, perhaps on the cusp of 9, and there was something eerily synchronized about the way they stood, hands clasped together, as if drawing silent, almost telepathic strength from one another. I frowned desperately, trying to place them, racking my brain to recall if I had ever seen them at any family gathering, any corporate event, or if they belonged to any of the business associates who had attended. Nothing. But before I could utter a single word, before I could even move a muscle in their direction, all three turned in perfect unison like a single choreographed entity, their movements eerily precise, and walked away, disappearing with unsettling swiftness behind the gnarled oak tree. Arthur's voice, calm and steady as always, broke through my swirling thoughts, pulling me back to the stark reality of the cemetery. "Sir," he said, his voice a low rumble, "the car is ready." I blinked, the image of the girls vivid in my mind. I glanced once more in the direction where the triplets had vanished, a flicker of unease nagging at me, an unshakable question mark in the back of my mind. Then I shook my head, dismissing it. "It's probably nothing," I muttered to myself, a desperate attempt to rationalize the inexplicable. Perhaps they're relatives of the cemetery caretaker, or simply local children curious about the large gathering. I tried to push the strange encounter from my mind, to bury it beneath layers of logic and reason, or at least tried to, and as I walked toward the waiting car, my thoughts, heavy and mournful, already sank back into the familiar abyss of loss that had become my constant, unwelcome companion. But a tiny, insistent seed of doubt had been planted, a whisper of a question that refused to be silenced even by the profound weight of my grief. That night, in the cavernous silence of my penthouse, overlooking the glittering tapestry of the Manhattan skyline, the image of those three identical girls refused to dissipate. It was an anomaly in my rigidly structured world. I was never one to dwell on strangers, to entertain idle curiosities. My mind, usually a precision instrument for market analysis and strategic planning, was stubbornly fixated on their pale faces, their synchronized movements, the uncanny intensity in their eyes. There was something about them, a silent, unsettling message that pricked at the edges of my desolate mind, and I couldn't decipher it. I poured myself another glass of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling indolently in the dim light of my study. My eyes, heavy with unspoken sorrow, flickered toward a framed photograph of Amelia on my desk, her smile radiant and full of life. "I miss you," I whispered, my voice cracking slightly, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Amelia had always possessed an uncanny intuition, a belief that everything happened for a reason, that every encounter held a deeper meaning. She would have seen the threads of destiny weaving through this strange occurrence. If she were here, I mused, she would have gently chided me, told me not to ignore the insistent tugging at my gut, this strange compulsion about the girls. She'd have called it a sign, a whisper from the universe. I sighed, taking a fortifying sip of my drink, trying to convince myself it was merely grief, playing its cruel tricks on my mind, conjuring illusions from my sorrow. But deep down, in a place I rarely acknowledged, I knew with chilling certainty that this wouldn't be the last time I saw them. It felt predestined. Liam Walker had always been a man who looked forward, a strategist, who meticulously planned the future, never one to linger on the past or obsess over seemingly insignificant moments. My life was a forward march, precise and calculated. Yet for some inexplicable reason, the image of those three identical little girls remained stubbornly imprinted on my mind. It was a glitch in my perfect system. Sleep, a precious commodity in the best of times, utterly refused to come. I lay awake in my vast Manhattan penthouse, staring up at the cold, unfeeling ceiling, listening to the distant, rhythmic hum of the city that never truly sleeps. Each closing of my eyes brought them back, vivid and unsettling, standing by the ancient oak tree, their faces pale and unreadable, their movements eerily synchronized, watching me with an intensity that unsettlingly felt almost familiar, like a half-forgotten dream teasing the edges of consciousness. By morning, I was exhausted, mentally, emotionally, physically. Every muscle ached with the tension of a sleepless night. I tried to rationalize it away, forcing a semblance of normalcy. I convinced myself that I was simply overthinking, attributing undue significance to a fleeting moment, a consequence of my profound emotional devastation. The funeral had been emotionally devastating, a profound psychic drain, And perhaps my mind, reeling from the shock and grief, had merely conjured a strange symbolic encounter. Grief, after all, was known for playing such strange, deceptive tricks on the human psyche. It twisted perceptions, blurred the lines of reality. I tried to push the image down, to bury it beneath layers of logic and reason, to file it away as an anomaly, but it stubbornly resurfaced, a persistent, unwelcome echo in my thoughts. The next afternoon, the illusion of normalcy completely crumbled. I found myself sitting in my executive office on the 54th floor of Walker Capital, staring blankly at quarterly reports. Numbers blurred, projections made no sense. My assistant, Miss Davies, a paragon of efficiency with a no-nonsense demeanor, had scheduled back-to-back meetings, a relentless barrage of data and decisions, but my mind was miles away. It was fixated almost morbidly on the three mystery girls. I had spent my entire life making calculated decisions, dissecting complex problems, and predicting volatile market trends with uncanny precision. Yet I couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling that this was something profoundly important, something I desperately needed to understand, a puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere in my meticulously constructed world. It was an itch I couldn't scratch, a question without an answer. Frustrated with my own inability to focus, with the persistent nagging at the back of my mind, I picked up my phone. "Arthur?" I began, my voice betraying a hint of urgency I rarely allowed. Even Arthur, who knew my every inflection, paused for a beat on the other end before responding, his tone calm and steady. "Yes, sir," Arthur said. "I need you to do something for me," I stated. "Do you remember those three little girls at the cemetery yesterday, the ones who stood by the oak tree?" There was a brief, characteristic pause. "Yes, sir," Arthur confirmed. "Three identical girls. They seemed to be observing the service from a distance." "Exactly," I said, running a hand through my salt and pepper hair, acutely aware of how unusual, perhaps even absurd, my request must sound coming from a man like me. A Wall Street magnate chasing phantom children. I need to find out who they are. Check with the cemetery staff. Perhaps they saw something. Find out whatever you can. Arthur's unwavering loyalty, one of the many reasons I valued him implicitly, meant he agreed without question. "Consider it done, sir," he said, his voice reassuringly professional, before ending the call. As I hung up, a strange mixture of apprehension and a faint flicker of hope, something I hadn't felt since Amelia's passing, began to stir within me. It was a precarious, unsettling emotion, but it was something, and after days of pure, crushing emptiness, even that felt like a lifeline. I felt a faint pull, a curiosity that bordered on obsession that simply could not be ignored. Later that evening, the city lights were a distant, shimmering tapestry below me. As I sat in my penthouse, a single whiskey in my hand, the familiar comfort of the crystal and amber liquid doing little to soothe the persistent thrumming beneath my ribs. Then my phone rang, a sharp, intrusive sound in the quiet vastness of my living room. It was Arthur. "Sir, I found them." Arthur stated, his voice, usually a model of detached professionalism, carried a slight tremor, a subtle note of gravity I rarely heard. My spine went rigid. I sat bolt upright on the sofa, my heartbeat quickening, a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread coiling in my stomach, cold and tight. "Who are they?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended, the words clipped and urgent. "Their names are Chloe Maya and Lily Hayes. They're 8 years old, sir, and they live in Brooklyn with their Aunt Sarah Hayes." Arthur paused, and I knew instantly there was more, a heavy silence pregnant with an unspoken revelation. "Sir," he continued, his tone softening with what sounded suspiciously like sympathy, "there's something else. Their mother was a woman named Olivia Hayes." The glass nearly slipped from my hand. Olivia Hayes. The name struck me like a physical blow, a sudden searing jolt of electricity that sent a shiver down my spine. Olivia Hayes. A name I hadn't heard in almost a decade, a name I had, with ruthless efficiency, banished to the deepest, most guarded chambers of my memory. Yet, it had been indelibly etched there, a constant, if suppressed, reminder of a part of my life I had deliberately walled off. We had met at a university fundraiser years ago, back when my ambition burned with a singular, blinding intensity. She was a brilliant, passionate young professor of literature, all fiery intellect and captivating charm, a stark contrast to the polished, calculating women who populated my world. Our relationship had been brief, yes, fleeting in the grand scheme of my life, but undeniably intense, a whirlwind of intoxicating passion, profound intellectual connection, and a fleeting glimpse of possibilities I'd never imagined for myself. But that glimpse had, with what I now realized, Was crushing short-sighted efficiency been extinguished when my burgeoning career demanded my unwavering focus and a pivotal move to London? I, in my youthful arrogance, had convinced myself it was merely a fleeting, passionate dalliance, easily left behind a temporary distraction on my climb to the top. I'd walked away convinced I was making the smart strategic choice. What a fool I'd been. Sir Arthur's voice, now tinged with an almost delicate sympathy, pulled me back to the present, shattering the vivid, painful memory. There's more. Olivia passed away 3 months ago. Leukemia. My throat tightened, a sudden raw ache blooming behind my sternum, spreading through my chest. Leukemia. The word was a hammer blow. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth, metallic and acrid. Olivia gone. The woman I'd once... A woman who held this secret from me. And the girls I managed, my voice hoarse, barely a whisper. You said they're 8. Yes, Sir Arthur confirmed. Born May 12th, 9 years ago. 9 years. The timing, precise and unforgiving, aligned perfectly with our relationship, a chilling, undeniable synchronicity. A heavy, suffocating realization settled over me like a shroud, a weight I hadn't known I was capable of bearing. My daughters. The thought was a seismic shift beneath my feet, a complete overturning of my reality. Thank you, Arthur, I managed to choke out before hanging up, my world spinning on its axis, the penthouse around me feeling strangely insubstantial. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the glittering, indifferent city lights below, my mind racing with terrifying implications. 3 identical girls, 8 years old, Olivia's daughters, my daughters. It was a truth so monumental, so unexpected, that it threatened to crack open the very foundations of my meticulously constructed existence. Arthur arrived at my penthouse early the next morning before the city had fully woken, carrying a heavy manila folder. I hadn't slept a wink, the shocking revelation from Arthur's call replaying endlessly in my mind. My thoughts were a relentless torrent of questions, bewildering possibilities, and a growing, terrifying sense of certainty that threatened to overturn my entire meticulously constructed world. Everything I could find is in here, Sir Arthur said, his usual quiet efficiency still present, but I detected a flicker of something in his eyes. Concern? Pity. He placed the thick folder on the polished glass coffee table. It wasn't easy, but I have a friend in public records. I nodded my hand, hesitating for a long, agonizing moment before I finally opened the folder. The paper felt cold, clinical, alien. Inside were crisp copies of birth certificates for Chloe Grace Hayes, Maya Rose Hayes, and Lily Faith Hayes, all born within minutes of each other at New York Presbyterian Hospital. Mother Olivia Hayes, father not listed. That last line, stark and unforgiving, hit me with a fresh wave of nausea. My throat tightened again, a searing pain as I examined copies of school registration forms, medical records, and finally, a death certificate for Olivia Hayes, cause of death complications from acute myeloid leukemia. My vision blurred, Olivia gone, and I hadn't known. Their Aunt Sarah Hayes works as a high school counselor in Brooklyn. Arthur continued, his voice softer now, sensing my profound distress. She's been raising the girls since Olivia passed. From what I gather, they're struggling financially. Medical bills wiped out whatever savings Olivia had. I stared numbly at a yellowed newspaper clipping tucked neatly into the folder about Olivia's academic achievements. A tenured professor of English literature at Columbia by 32, a published author highly respected in her field. And all along she had been raising triplet daughters, alone. The image of her, brilliant and accomplished, yet burdened by unseen struggles, filled me with a crushing, almost unbearable shame. There's one more thing, Arthur added, hesitantly breaking the heavy silence that had settled between us. I found this. He handed me a faded photograph. My eyes found them instantly, 3 little girls in shimmering tutus, beaming with unadulterated joy at what appeared to be a ballet recital. Their identical faces radiated an almost blinding happiness, a pure, innocent light. And standing behind them, a proud, loving presence, was Olivia. She was thinner than I remembered her, her once vibrant features now subtly gaunt, a hint of the illness that would claim her visible in the shadows beneath her eyes. But her smile, though faint, was radiant, with an unmistakable pride, a fierce devotion to her daughters. Something inside me, something I hadn't known was still capable of breaking, shattered completely. She never told me. All these years I had had daughters, 3 beautiful, vibrant daughters, and never known. Had she kept them from me out of malice, out of spite for my ambition? Or something else, something I couldn't fathom, something even more devastating? Did you find anything about why she never contacted me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, raw with a desperate need for understanding, for a reason, for anything to explain this gaping hole in my life. Arthur shook his head slowly. Nothing concrete, sir. But I did speak to a neighbor who knew Olivia well. A woman named Mrs. Rodriguez. She lived next door to Olivia for years. She said Olivia was fiercely independent, incredibly proud. Never wanted to be seen as asking for handouts no matter how tough things got. Apparently, she told friends that the girl's father had made it clear his career came first, that he'd moved on to bigger things, that he'd left New York behind for London and a new life. I closed my eyes, the words, a direct, painful echo of my own past. A searing memory flashed through my mind, our final conversation before I'd left for London. Olivia had asked me to stay, her eyes earnest, saying we could build something real together. I, in my arrogant youth and single-minded ambition, had dismissed it as impractical romanticism, an emotional impediment to my ascent. I had told her that my career path was set, unyielding, and couldn't accommodate serious relationships, that I had to chase my destiny. I had been so young, so ruthlessly ambitious, so utterly tragically foolish. Her sacrifice, I now realized, was not born of spite, but of a profound, heartbreaking love, a desire to protect me from a choice she believed I would regret, and to shield herself and her children from a perceived rejection. Find out where they live, I said, the decision crystallizing in my mind, pushing aside the wave of nausea and guilt, replacing it with an almost manic determination, and their schedules. School activities, extracurriculars, everything. I want every detail, Arthur. Sir, if I may, Arthur began, his voice cautious, a rare moment of stepping outside his role. These girls just lost their mother. They don't know you. Approaching them might be jarring, sensitive. I know I interrupted, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands, a tremor born not of fear but of an overwhelming primal need. I need to be careful. I'm not going to barge into their lives and announce myself as their father. Not yet, but I need to see them, Arthur. I need to understand what Olivia created without me. I need to see them. The gravity of my request hung in the air, a silent, profound promise to myself, a desperate plea for a chance at redemption. The next chapter of my life, I knew, had just begun. That very afternoon, I found myself sitting in my custom-built town car, the tinted windows a perfect shield from the outside world, parked discreetly across the street from PS 107 in Park Slope. My gaze, usually scanning market tickers and financial data, was fixed on the school entrance, watching the chaotic, joyful stream of children pouring out of the building. The air buzzed with their unrestrained energy, a sound so foreign to my meticulously curated silence. And then I saw them, three identical figures in matching navy blue school uniforms, backpacks slung awkwardly over their small shoulders, walking together in perfect, almost unconscious step. My daughters. The girls who I instinctively knew would shatter every preconceived notion of my life, change absolutely everything. For the next week, I, Liam Walker, led a bewildering, exhausting double life. By day, I was the ruthless Wall Street investor, the financial shark orchestrating multi-million-dollar deals and commanding boardrooms with an iron will. Miss Davies, my assistant, would report on my unyielding schedule, never suspecting that her boss, the titan of industry, was moonlighting as a clandestine observer. But by late afternoon, I transformed. My tailored suits were exchanged for nondescript casual wear jeans, a simple baseball cap pulled low, and my car became a mobile, almost invisible observation post. I parked subtly near ballet studios, bustling schoolyards, and leafy parks, the places where Chloe, Maya, and Lily spent their precious, unburdened time. The irony wasn't lost on me. I, who commanded billions, was now spending my afternoons staking out elementary school playgrounds. I meticulously learned their patterns, mapping out their week with the precision I usually reserved for complex market trends. Mondays and Wednesdays were ballet lessons. I noted their tiny figures, even from a distance, moving with surprising grace, a fluidity I hadn't expected. I saw Chloe always at the front, leading the formation, a natural leader, even in a dance class. Thursdays, they attended an after-school art program. I'd park by the community center, catching glimpses of their paint-splattered smocks through the large windows, their bursts of color and laughter reaching me even through the closed glass. Fridays, their Aunt Sarah, whom I'd now seen a few times, a kind-faced woman with a tired but resolute air, took them for ice cream at a charming little shop in Park Slope, their small hands clutching enormous cones. I watched them from afar, a strange, potent mix of professional detachment and profound, burgeoning connection swirling within me. I began recognizing faint echoes of myself in each girl, ghostly reflections of traits I hadn't acknowledged in years. The determined set of Chloe's jaw, a mirror of my own unwavering focus when closing a difficult deal. Maya's analytical way of observing everything around her, her bright green eyes so like Olivia's, I noted with a pang, taking in details I often missed a tiny scholar in the making. And Lily's naturally graceful movements and innate artistry, a dreaminess that I vaguely remembered Olivia possessing in her moments of quiet contemplation. But observing them, charting their movements, memorizing their expressions, it wasn't enough. It only intensified the ache. I needed to know more to understand them beyond these fleeting glimpses beyond the surface of their lives. I needed their stories, their fears, their unvoiced dreams. I want everything, Arthur, I instructed him one evening, my voice laced with an urgency that surprised even myself. It wasn't just a request. It was a desperate hunger. Their medical history school reports who their friends are, what books they read. I need to understand them. Every single detail. Arthur, ever loyal but now visibly concerned by my single-mindedness, by the way this strange obsession had eclipsed even my work, compiled what he could. He navigated the bureaucratic maze of privacy with his usual quiet efficiency, pulling strings only he knew how to pull. He returned to my penthouse a few days later, another thick folder in hand, his brow furrowed with a hint of worry that touched me more than he knew. Sir Arthur said carefully, his voice softer than usual, "I've gathered what I could, but there's something you should see first, before you delve into all this." He seemed to be bracing himself, and I braced myself in turn, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. The way he spoke, the slight hesitation, told me this wasn't just more data. This was different. This was personal. I looked at my daughters, these innocent beings whom I had unknowingly created, children carrying my very essence yet living lives utterly disconnected from mine. With each passing observation, each new detail I uncovered, the weight of my regret grew heavier, more suffocating. I regretted the lost years, the precious first moments I had missed, first smiles, first words, first steps, every scraped knee, every childish triumph. I regretted the choices I had made, choices that had propelled me forward in my career but had taken me so far from Olivia and the family I hadn't even known existed. The choices that had made me so rich but so utterly empty. I felt an overwhelming, almost primal urge to be a part of their lives, not just a distant observer, but a tangible, loving presence. I yearned to know everything about them, not through sterile documents or Arthur's diligent reports, but through direct interaction, through shared experiences, through the profound, messy, beautiful reality of paternal love. This aching desire to connect was an entirely new emotion for a man who had only ever measured success in numbers and profits. It was confusing, terrifying, and utterly compelling. I began to realize that this wasn't merely a task, a problem to solve. It was a journey to rediscover myself, to find the true human meaning of my own existence. The more I watched, the more I craved that connection, that profound, life-altering bond. And I knew with a certainty that chilled and thrilled me that whatever Arthur was about to show me, it would only deepen that craving, make the gap between us feel even more unbearable. The folder felt heavier than it looked in Arthur's hand, a mundane manila casing holding a truth that would splinter my world. He placed it carefully on my polished glass coffee table, his expression uncharacteristically somber. I reached for it, my fingers trembling almost imperceptibly, a tremor that had nothing to do with market volatility and everything to do with a premonition. Inside, nestled among sterile official documents, birth certificates, medical records, a death certificate that felt like a cold final judgment, was a single fragile letter. It wasn't addressed to me, but to my darling girls. My breath hitched a sudden sharp intake of air. The paper was slightly yellowed, creased at the edges, a testament to time and hidden meaning. And the handwriting, Olivia's elegant, distinctive script, a beautiful flourish that had once adorned love notes, now a testament to her enduring spirit. Seeing it again after all these years was like a jolt of electricity, a sudden vivid flood of suppressed memories. Her quick smile, the way her eyes sparkled when she was passionate about literature, the quiet strength that had always drawn me in. Arthur, bless him, remained silent, a discreet shadow in the periphery, sensing the monumental weight of the moment. I began to read her words flowing from the page, not just ink on paper, but a voice from the past, a confession whispered across the grave. "My darling girls," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means I've had to leave you sooner than I wanted." My throat tightened, a raw ache blooming behind my sternum. Sooner than she wanted. I could almost hear the pain, the profound sorrow in that simple phrase. There's so much I still needed to teach you, so many moments I wished to share. A lump formed in my throat, thick and unyielding. The image of her teaching, nurturing, guiding, all without me sliced through me. But know this, her words continued imbued with a fierce maternal love that radiated from the page. "You have been the greatest joy of my life. My 3 perfect miracles." My breath hitched again, a silent sob catching in my chest. Miracles. And I, their father, had been blind to them. Then came the part I both dreaded and desperately needed to hear. "There's something I should have told you about your father. His name is Liam Walker." My name stark and unadorned, staring back at me. He was brilliant, ambitious, and for a brief time, the love of my life. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow, a raw, aching pain that spread through my chest, sharper than any market crash. The love of her life. And I had discarded her so carelessly, so ruthlessly. When I discovered I was carrying you, he had already left for a new life in London. A fresh wave of nausea washed over me. I remembered that departure, a clean break, I'd told myself. An act of self-preservation, of career advancement. Now it was revealed as an act of profound, unwitting cruelty. I made a choice then, perhaps right, perhaps wrong, not to tell him about you. My eyes blurred, the carefully inked words blurring on the page. Right or wrong? Oh, Olivia, how could you think it was anything but an impossible burden you shouldered alone? It wasn't because he wouldn't have cared. It was because I saw his path clearly, a future of tremendous success that required his complete dedication. My jaw tightened, my path, my unyielding, single-minded pursuit of power and wealth. She had seen it, understood it, and chosen to step aside. I couldn't bear to be the one who forced him to choose, or worse, to be resented by him for changing the course of his life. The words twisted in my gut, a bitter, self-reproachful torment. Resented, the thought was unthinkable now. My ambition, once my greatest pride, now felt like a monstrous, selfish beast. So I chose for all of us and embraced the beautiful challenge of raising you alone, her unwavering strength, her quiet sacrifice. It was staggering, incomprehensible. I've never regretted that decision, not when I saw your first smiles, heard your first words, or watched you take your first steps. Each phrase a tiny knife twisting in my heart. All those moments, the very fabric of their childhood woven without me. The milestones, the triumphs, the simple everyday joys of watching a child grow, all missed. But I've often wondered if you might someday need him, or if he might need you. Her foresight, her lingering hope for connection, even as she faded, humbled me completely. If someday you wish to find him, know that my choice doesn't bind you. You have that right. All my love forever and always, Mom. I read the letter not once but 3 times each, reading, deepening the chasm of pain and regret within me, each word carving a new line of sorrow onto my soul. Tears, hot and unbidden, streamed down my face, blurring my vision until the words ran together in an illegible blur. She hadn't kept the girls from me out of malice, out of spite, or out of a desire for revenge. She had given me the ultimate, most agonizing gift, the freedom to pursue my ruthless ambitions, shoulder the immense, unimaginable burden of raising 3 children alone, and do it without a word of complaint, without a single plea for help. The weight of her sacrifice crushed me, a physical ache in my chest, a bitter, self-reproachful taste that filled my mouth. She never even tried to contact me. I whispered the words barely audible, more to myself than to Arthur, who stood silently, respectfully witnessing my breakdown. According to her sister Sarah, Arthur said quietly, his voice gentle, sensing my profound distress, she almost did once. When the girls were about 3, Olivia was struggling financially. Mrs. Rodriguez, her neighbor, told me she saw Olivia researching adoption agencies, not because she wanted to give them up, but because she was desperate, unable to cope. She had found you online, sir, after a major acquisition was announced. She saw you'd married Amelia, that you seemed to be building the exact life she'd imagined for you, the perfect, childless power couple. Mrs. Rodriguez said Olivia looked at the photos for a long time, then she just turned away. She decided then and there to let you be. I closed my eyes, a searing image forming in my mind. Olivia alone, utterly exhausted, with 3 toddlers navigating the crushing weight of financial hardship, struggling to make ends meet, working tirelessly, perhaps going without food or sleep, all to support them, never asking for help. And I meanwhile was sipping champagne in my penthouse, celebrating another multi-million-dollar deal, while Amelia and I had everything, unlimited resources, every luxury, every comfort, except the children we so desperately longed for. The irony was a bitter, unbearable poison, a cruel cosmic joke played at Olivia's expense and ultimately mine. My life built on ambition now felt like a colossal, tragic mistake. The truth contained in that letter fundamentally altered my perception of the past and irrevocably shaped my vision for the future. It wasn't just a revelation, it was a detonation tearing down the walls I had built around my heart. I felt an overwhelming surge of determination, a fierce primal need to make amends, not just to my daughters for their father's absence, but in a way to Olivia herself, to honor her incredible sacrifice. It wasn't about money. It was about presence, about love, about becoming the father she had so selflessly sacrificed for me to be. I need to meet them, I said at last, my voice firm despite its raw emotion, despite the tears still tracing paths down my cheeks. Not as their father, not yet. The shock would be too great. But somehow I need to be in their lives. I must be. This wasn't merely a desire. It was a profound, unshakable resolve that would redefine every aspect of my existence. It was my chance at redemption, my unexpected path to a purpose greater than any financial empire. The crisp autumn air in Prospect Park did little to calm the tremor of anxiety rippling through me. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in decades, not since my first high-stakes hostile takeover, and it was utterly disorienting. My usual tailored suit, my armor. My identity was replaced by jeans and a simple button-down shirt, a conscious, almost desperate attempt to appear less intimidating, more approachable. My hands, usually so steady, were clasped tightly in front of me as I sat on a park bench, the cold metal seeping through the fabric. Arthur, ever my steadfast support, had arranged this meeting through Sarah Hayes. To my surprise, Sarah had been remarkably receptive, her voice cautious but not hostile once I explained who I was and crucially showed her Olivia's letter. "They know you're someone who knew their mother," Sarah had told me over the phone, her voice guarded, but tinged with a weariness that suggested years of quiet struggle. "That's all for now. The rest, Mr. Walker, is up to you." Now, as I watched the winding path where Sarah would bring the girls, my mind raced a frantic rehearsal of what I'd say. How does one introduce oneself to children you created, but never knew, children who had just lost their mother and had no idea who you truly were, children who had every right to resent your very existence? The ethical tightrope I walked felt impossibly thin. I spotted them before they saw me, 3 identical small figures, but now, as Sarah had forewarned, distinguished by their brightly colored jackets, Chloe in a vibrant red, Maya in a calming blue, and Lily in a playful, almost whimsical purple. Sarah had explained this was their small rebellion, their silent assertion of individuality against the inherent sameness of triplets. It was a detail so poignant, so deeply human that it tightened my chest. Sarah caught my eye and offered a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, a silent signal of reassurance that did little to calm my churning stomach. Then she leaned down, her dark hair brushing against their matching auburn heads, whispering something to the girls. They approached cautiously, their tiny faces mirroring identical expressions of curiosity and unmistakably suspicion. They moved as one, a singular watchful unit, their gazes dissecting me with a precision that felt unnerving. "Girls, this is Mr. Walker," Sarah said, her voice gentle, bridging the awkward, gaping silence that hung between us. "The friend of your mom's I told you about." I stood suddenly feeling awkward and impossibly oversized in their small presence, a clumsy giant in their delicate world. "Hello?" I managed my voice softer than my usual boardroom command, a mere murmur. "Thank you for meeting me." The girls said nothing, their tiny bodies held rigid, maintaining a unified front, their silence more powerful, more eloquent than any words. It was an unspoken challenge. Sarah, sensing the tension, gestured toward a nearby playground, a brightly colored oasis just beyond the path. "Why don't you three go play for a bit while Mr. Walker and I talk?" The triplets exchanged glances, a rapid, silent conversation playing out in their shared gazes. One of those intuitive, almost telepathic communications that only multiples seem capable of. It was fascinating, terrifying to witness. Finally, with a synchronous nod, they moved toward the swings, their eyes still watching me over their shoulders, a palpable air of wariness surrounding them like small, cautious woodland creatures. "That's Chloe in red." Sarah explained, her voice low as she sat down beside me on the bench, her gaze following the girls. "She's the protector, the firstborn. Fiercely loyal, a natural leader. Always looking out for her sisters. She's the one who asked me about you." My heart gave a painful thud. So Chloe was the instigator. Maya in blue is the thinker, the analyst. Always observing, always questioning, the quiet one who absorbs everything. She's probably dissecting your every move right now. A wry, self-deprecating smile touched my lips. And Lily in purple is the peacemaker, the one who feels everything most deeply, very artistic and sensitive. I nodded, trying to commit their subtle differences to memory, to imprint their unique essences into my mind, recognizing faint, bittersweet echoes of Olivia in each description. How much does Lily resemble Olivia? I murmured, watching Lily's gentle movements on the swing, her small body swaying rhythmically. "They all have pieces of her," Sarah said, her voice softening, a wistful note entering her tone. "And pieces of you, Liam. Chloe has your determination, that drive, that stubbornness you have. Maya has your analytical mind, she misses nothing, just like you. And Lily has your artistic sensitivity, your quiet intensity, though you might not recognize that in yourself." Her words felt like a gentle probe, a suggestion that there was more to me than the public persona I presented. They continued to play, keeping a distinct distance from other children, self-contained and sufficient unto themselves. My daughters. The thought was still so alien, so profound. "They've been through so much," Sarah continued, her voice heavy with unspoken sorrow, her gaze distant, fixed on the girls. "Olivia was sick for almost a year before she trailed off, the pain evident in her eyes, a shadow passing over her face. They're still processing it. Chloe barely speaks anymore except to direct her sisters to keep them in line. Maya has nightmares still. And Lily draws the same picture over and over, their mother in a hospital bed fading away. I felt a painful tightness in my chest, a fresh agonizing wave of guilt washing over me. This was the cost of my ambition, the profound innocent suffering I had unwittingly caused. "I want to help them," I said, my voice hoarse, a desperate plea. "With all due respect, Mr. Walker," Sarah said carefully, her gaze firm, meeting mine with an unwavering intensity. "They don't need your money. They need stability, consistency. They need you, but if you're going to be in their lives, it can't be halfway. It has to be all in." Her words were a challenge, a truth I couldn't deny. Before I could formulate a response, Chloe surprisingly approached her sisters, trailing behind her like silent shadows, their game abandoned. She stood directly in front of me, arms crossed, her small stature belying the sheer power in her stance, the unblinking directness of her gaze. "Did you really know our mom?" Chloe demanded, her voice strong, unwavering, cutting through the autumn air like a sharp blade. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation, a raw demand for truth in her young eyes. "Yes," I said truthfully, my voice steady despite the turmoil within me. "A long time ago." "Then why didn't you ever visit her?" she pressed, relentless. "Why haven't we met you before?" Her eyes narrowed sharp and accusatory, missing nothing. My gaze flickered to Sarah, who gave me a small, encouraging nod, a silent permission to speak. I looked back at Chloe, preparing for the blow. "I lived far away for many years," I explained the inadequacy of the answer crushing me. If I had known about you three, Chloe, I would have visited. Chloe's eyes narrowed further, suspicion etched on her small face. You're rich, aren't you? I saw your car. She gestured dismissively toward the discreetly parked town car. Chloe Sarah admonished gently, her voice a soft warning. It's okay, Sarah, I interjected, my voice surprisingly steady. Yes, I am. Chloe's next words, delivered with chilling, brutal simplicity, cut to the bone straight through my carefully constructed defenses. Then why didn't you help Mom when she was sick? Rich people can get special doctors, right? The devastating simplicity of her logic, the raw, undeniable accusation in her innocent eyes. I had no defense, no acceptable answer. The truth was, I hadn't known. And that was the cruelest irony of all. Before I could formulate a response, Lily, the quiet peacemaker, stepped forward, her small hand reaching out tentatively, then dropping. She studied my face intently, her eyes wide and soft. Mom had a picture of you, she said softly, her voice a gentle balm, a surprising interlude in the tension, in her special box. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched heavy with unspoken histories, with lost years. Then Maya, who had been quietly observing the entire exchange, her analytical gaze missing nothing, her small brow furrowed in deep thought, asked the question that hung in the air, the question that changed everything, forcing me to confront the very core of my past, my choices, my deepest regret. Were you in love with our mom? Were you in love with our mom? Maya's innocent yet profoundly direct question, delivered without preamble, without accusation, just pure, unvarnished curiosity, hung in the cool, crisp air of Prospect Park. For a long, terrifying moment, I felt as though I'd forgotten how to breathe, every cell in my body frozen. Three identical pairs of eyes, impossibly wide and wise for their age, watched me expectantly. Their disarming frankness was a weapon I was entirely unprepared for. This wasn't a boardroom negotiation where calculated answers won me points or closed deals. There was no strategic response that would secure a victory here. There was only the raw, unvarnished truth laid bare. I looked at Maya's intense, searching gaze, then Chloe's cautious, watchful eyes, and finally Lily's soft, vulnerable ones. My throat felt impossibly dry. Yes, I said the word, a mere whisper, yet it felt like a lifetime's confession, a shedding of decades of emotional armor. Yes, I was. Something subtle shifted in the girl's expressions, then a fleeting change, almost imperceptible but unmistakable. The suspicion in Chloe's eyes softened just a fraction. Maya's gaze, though still analytical, held a newfound curiosity devoid of judgment, and Lily's small lips curved upward just slightly in a ghost of a smile. It was Lily who spoke next, her voice, as always, a gentle melodic whisper that cut through the lingering tension. She had a special smile when she talked about you, different from her regular smile. I swallowed hard, a painful lump forming in my throat. The image of Olivia's radiant, almost secret smile, the one so rarely seen by others but cherished by me in our brief, intense time together, flashed in my mind, vivid and poignant. Lily's innocent observation, coming from a child who had known her mother's every nuance, validated a past I had tried to erase. What did she tell you about me? I asked, my voice barely audible, a desperate plea for more fragments of a life I'd missed. Chloe, ever the pragmatic one, crossed her arms tighter, her gaze still assessing, but with a new, grudging acceptance. Not much, just that you were smart and ambitious and lived far away. Her words were simple, factual, devoid of the emotional weight I had expected. She said you were going to change the world. Maya added, her analytical gaze still assessing me, weighing my words, her young mind processing every data point. Did you? The question, delivered with such disarming innocence, struck me like a physical blow, sharper than any public criticism I'd ever faced. Had I changed the world, I had certainly made billions, controlled markets, transformed city skylines with my investments, accumulated unimaginable power. My name was synonymous with ruthless success. But sitting here in this park facing these three small girls, my daughters, all of that seemed remarkably hollow, utterly meaningless, in the face of their profound questions. It tasted like ash, that success, bitter and empty. I answered honestly, the words tasting bitter, a confession of my own profound inadequacy. But I'm not sure I succeeded in the ways that truly matter. The admission hung in the air, a raw piece of my soul laid bare. Sarah, sensing the emotional intensity of the moment and the delicate balance of this fragile new connection, stood up, placing a comforting hand on Chloe's shoulder. "Girls, we should probably head home. It's getting late and you have ballet in the morning. Can I see you again?" I asked the question directed more at the triplets than at Sarah, my voice laced with a desperate, almost desperate plea belying my usual composure. Their reaction held all the power now. The girls exchanged another glance, a rapid, silent conference taking place between their interconnected minds. I held my breath, every fiber of my being taut with anticipation. Finally, Chloe, their unofficial spokesperson, spoke for them all, her voice still cautious but softer this time. "Maybe. We'll think about it." As I watched them walk away, their small hands clasped in Sarah's, a familiar wave of profound helplessness washed over me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in decades. This was a complete loss of control over a situation, a humbling reality for a man accustomed to manipulating every variable. These three small humans, with their innocent yet piercing questions, held all the power, and rightly so. I was at their mercy, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The next 12 days were an agonizing eternity. My penthouse, even the newly transformed East Wing, felt like a silent echoing cage. I'd micromanaged every detail: the custom-built bookshelves, for Chloe, the observatory-grade telescope, for Maya, the art studio setup for Lily. I'd consulted with 3 more child psychologists, reading every book they recommended on sibling dynamics, on childhood grief, on nurturing burgeoning talents. I'd rearranged my entire corporate structure, delegating tasks I previously held absolute iron-fisted control over, freeing up my afternoons. My board members, accustomed to my unyielding focus, raised eyebrows, but no one dared question my sudden, uncharacteristic shift in priorities. Yet despite all the preparations, the constant gnawing doubt remained: would I ever truly hear from my daughters again? Would there maybe become a never? Then on the afternoon of the 12th day, my phone rang. It was Sarah. My grip tightened on the device, a surge of adrenaline, of desperate, fragile hope coursing through me. "Liam," Sarah said, her voice measured, revealing nothing of her own thoughts, yet tinged with a delicate anticipation. "They have a ballet showcase this Saturday." My heart pounded against my ribs. "Lily mentioned that you might want to attend." Lily. Her small, gentle hand in mine, her whispered "thank you." This was her invitation. Lily said that I managed the words, barely a rasp. "Yes," Sarah confirmed, "specifically Lily. Hold on, Mr. Walker, I need to be clear." Her voice became serious, reminding me of the precarious balance we maintained. "They still don't know who you really are yet. They think you're just an old friend of Olivia's, who's recently come back into their lives." I swallowed hard, the deception, a heavy weight on my conscience, but I understood the necessity for now. Rushing the truth could shatter everything. "I understand, Sarah," I replied, my voice firm, despite the underlying turmoil. "And please call me Liam." "Okay, Liam," she said, and I detected a faint approving note in her tone. "Then the showcase starts at 3 p.m., Parkside Ballet Academy." The address was precise, a lifeline thrown across the chasm. Saturday found me sitting conspicuously in the back row of a small auditorium, an ocean of unfamiliar faces, proud parents, doting grandparents, squabbling siblings, all clutching bouquets and cameras. I felt jarringly out of place in my carefully chosen casual clothes, dark jeans, a simple cashmere sweater. I tried to blend in, to become just another face in the crowd, but my presence still felt monumental. I was a man who commanded global markets, yet here I was, feeling utterly exposed, consumed by a nervous anticipation I hadn't felt since I was a child myself. The program listed the triplets in the intermediate group performance Waltz of the Flowers from the Nutcracker. My hands were clammy, a ridiculous reaction for Liam Walker. When they appeared on stage in identical pale pink tutus, their auburn hair pulled back in neat buns that glinted under the stage lights, my breath caught in my throat. They moved with surprising grace for 8-year-olds, their synchronization both eerie and beautiful, a testament to countless hours of practice. Yet even in their perfect unison, I could discern their individualities. Chloe's movements were more precise, almost militaristic, her focus unyielding. Maya's were more technical, her form impeccable, her gaze fixed on the dance. Lily's were the most expressive, imbued with a natural flowing artistry, her every gesture telling a story. They were breathtaking. "They're quite talented," whispered a woman beside me, a complete stranger clutching a bouquet of daisies. Such discipline at their age. I could only nod, a lump forming in my throat, too choked with emotion to speak. An overwhelming, unfamiliar, profound pride washed over me, so intense it almost brought tears to my eyes. These extraordinary children blossoming before my eyes shared my DNA, my very essence, yet I'd had nothing to do with their development, their talents, their undeniable resilience. It was a stinging realization, a sharp reminder of the years I'd missed. After the performance, a cacophony of applause and chatter, I waited in the bustling lobby, clutching a small, carefully chosen bouquet of white and pink roses. When the triplets emerged with Sarah, their faces flushed with exertion and excitement, their tutus slightly rumpled, Lily spotted me first. Her eyes widened and a small, genuine smile touched her lips. She tugged on Chloe's sleeve and pointed in my direction. The three approached, still in their performance makeup and tutus, a vision of youthful beauty, a living, breathing testament to Olivia's legacy. "You came," Lily said, her voice a surprised, joyful exclamation, a small victory for me that resonated louder than any standing ovation. I said I would. I replied, kneeling to their level, my voice softer than I thought possible, offering the flowers. "You were amazing up there." Maya accepted the bouquet, her usual analytical gaze immediately scrutinizing the blooms. "These are specialty roses," she noted, her brow furrowed slightly. "They don't sell these at regular florists." She looked up at me, a question in her eyes. I smiled, a genuine smile this time, not a practiced corporate one. "You know your flowers. Mom was a botanist before she became a professor." Chloe said, her guard still up, but noticeably less hostile than before, almost conversational. "She taught us all the Latin names, Rosa centifolia." Lily added softly, her voice almost a whisper, leaning closer. "Mom's favorite." My heart skipped a beat, a sudden sharp pang of disbelief and profound connection. I had chosen Olivia's favorite flower without knowing, a mere coincidence that felt profoundly significant. A silent echo across the years, a whisper from a past I had carelessly abandoned. It was as if Olivia herself in her infinite wisdom had guided my hand. "Would you like to get ice cream?" I offered, hoping to extend this fragile connection, to anchor this fleeting joy, to celebrate your performance. The girls looked to Sarah, their silent conference playing out again in their expressions. Sarah gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of permission. "We were heading there anyway," Sarah said. "You're welcome to join us, Liam." At the ice cream parlor, a lively, colorful place filled with sticky tables and the sweet scent of sugar, I watched the girls debate flavors with intense focus, negotiating tastes and combinations like seasoned diplomats. It was chaotic, loud, and utterly exhilarating. When they finally sat down with their elaborate sundaes piled high with whipped cream and sprinkles, I noticed Maya, who had been quietly observing me over her spoon for some time, suddenly asked a question that cut straight to the chase, her analytical mind missing nothing. "Why did you come back now?" she asked, her voice clear and direct. "After Mom died," Sarah tensed beside me, bracing for my response, but I had prepared for this very question, rehearsing it countless times in the silent hours of my sleepless nights. "I didn't know about your mother's passing until recently," I said truthfully, my gaze steady, meeting Maya's unflinching eyes. "When I found out, I wanted to meet you because—" I paused, choosing my words carefully, wanting them to resonate with sincerity, to convey the depth of my regret and my burgeoning hope. "Because your mother was very special to me, and I thought perhaps I could be a friend to you three as well." "We have friends," Chloe said flatly, ever the pragmatic, ever the wall. "Of course you do." I acknowledged, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. "But sometimes it's good to have adult friends too, people who can help with different things." Like what Lily asked, curious, her eyes wide. I thought for a moment, searching for something simple, relatable, something that might pique their interest. "Well, I know quite a bit about the city. I could show you places your mother might have enjoyed, hidden gems, or help with homework if you ever get stuck on a tricky math problem." I added, trying to lighten the mood, "Or just listen if you ever want to talk about anything at all. No judgments, just a listening ear." The triplets exchanged glances again, another of their silent conversations taking place, weighing my words, my sincerity. "We'll think about it," Chloe finally said, their standard non-committal response, but this time there was a faint flicker of possibility in her eyes. But as they were leaving, the bell above the door jingling softly, something happened that felt monumental. Lily, the gentle, artistic one, slipped her small, soft hand into mine just for a moment, her touch feather-light yet profoundly impactful, a direct current of hope. "Thank you for the flowers," she whispered, her eyes wide and earnest, "and for coming to see us dance." It was a tiny gesture, almost imperceptible to anyone else, but to me, it felt like the first most fragile bridge across the vast chasm of lost years between us. My heart, so recently a desolate wasteland, stirred with a faint but undeniable warmth. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Arthur's voice, usually so impassive, so devoid of personal inflection, was laced with an uncharacteristic concern, a subtle hint of worry that caught my attention. He stood by the idling town car, his gaze fixed on the modest brownstone apartment building in Park Slope, a picture of quiet apprehension. I adjusted the collar of my simple polo shirt, feeling an odd nervousness knotting in my stomach, a sensation I rarely experienced outside of high-stakes financial deals, certainly not when approaching a residential building. "Sarah invited me," I explained, trying to project a confidence I didn't entirely feel, my palms suddenly damp. "She said the girls want to show me something." It had been 3 weeks since the ballet showcase, 3 weeks of meticulously planned brief interactions. I had attended Chloe's first soccer practice, a chaotic flurry of small, determined legs, joined Maya at the Natural History Museum, marveling at her precocious knowledge of prehistoric beasts, and spent an afternoon at a quiet art supply store with Lily watching her eyes light up at the colors of a new pastel set. Each encounter had been brief, carefully supervised by Sarah, and ended before any real emotional progress could be made. We were building trust brick by painstaking brick, but it felt agonizingly slow. This invitation to their home, into their intimate space, felt like a truly significant step, a tentative, almost sacred opening into their carefully protected world. It felt like an invitation to a part of their lives I'd never dared to dream of seeing. Sarah opened the door before I could even knock, as if sensing my arrival. She greeted me with a polite smile that initially didn't quite reach her eyes, a familiar flicker of caution still lingering there. But her expression softened almost imperceptibly as she looked past me, sensing my apprehension, perhaps even my eagerness. "They're excited," she said quietly, acknowledging the novelty of my visit. "Which is new for them, but please remember Liam," she added, her voice dropping to a low, earnest tone. "They're still fragile, still healing." I knotted my throat tight, understanding the immense responsibility she was entrusting me with. The apartment, though undeniably small compared to my vast, echoing penthouse, radiated warmth and a lived-in comfort that instantly put me at ease. It wasn't opulent. It was vibrant. The walls were covered with a riot of children's artwork, bright, enthusiastic smears of paint and crayon, a testament to their boundless creativity and joy. Bookshelves overflowed with well-loved volumes, their spines worn from countless readings, their pages dog-eared. And photographs everywhere, a chronological visual history of a life I'd tragically missed entirely. Olivia with the girls as babies, swaddled and precious, as toddlers, chubby-cheeked and mischievous, at the beach, windswept and laughing, bundled up in the snow, their breath misting in the cold air, blowing out birthday candles, their faces alight with innocent wishes. It was a poignant, heartbreaking documentary of a life lived fully, beautifully without me. Each photo was a pang of regret, a silent accusation of my absence. "Mr. Walker," Lily's voice, a bright melodic chime, cut through my melancholic observations. She rushed from what appeared to be the tiny kitchen, her face smudged with flour, her eyes bright with enthusiasm that almost made me forget my own discomfort. "We're baking Mom's cookies, come see." She grabbed my hand, her small fingers surprisingly strong, and tugged me into the heart of their home. The kitchen was surprisingly functional, albeit cramped. Chloe and Maya were already at the counter, meticulously measuring ingredients into a bowl. 3 identical step stools allowed them to reach, and 3 matching aprons, each slightly askew flour-dusted, protected their clothes from the inevitable flour dust. "Lily, wash your hands again," Chloe instructed, ever the authority, her voice firm, even bossy, a trait I recognized all too well. She glanced at me, a flicker of something in her eyes I couldn't quite decipher, a grudging acceptance perhaps. These were Mom's special recipe. We make them on important days. I nodded, a profound sense of privilege washing over me at being included in this sacred ritual, this intimate family tradition. "What makes today important?" I asked gently, my voice soft, almost hushed. The triplets exchanged glances, a familiar silent communication passing between them, a shared secret only they understood. It's Mom's birthday. Maya finally explained, her voice matter of fact, yet with an undeniable undercurrent of emotion behind the words, a quiet sadness. We always bake together on birthdays. My throat tightened a sudden ache. Olivia's birthday. Another milestone. I'd unknowingly missed another day she'd celebrated alone with our daughters. I'm honored you'd let me be part of this, I said honestly, truly meaning every word. For the next hour, I watched them work with surprising coordination, a well-oiled machine of tiny bakers. Each girl handled different tasks. Lily joyfully mixed the wet ingredients, Maya meticulously measured the dry ones with scientific precision, and Chloe oversaw the entire operation with a serious intensity, ensuring every step was followed. Sarah supervised from the doorway, her expression softening as she watched my genuine amazement at the girls' abilities and perhaps at my own awkward attempts to offer minimal help, my large, clumsy hands feeling utterly useless next to their practiced efficiency. The aroma of baking cookies filled the apartment, warm and comforting, wrapping around me like a familiar hug. After cookies, we want to show you our room, Lily announced once the first batch was in the oven, filling the apartment with a warm, comforting aroma that promised childhood delights. Their bedroom, while undeniably small for 3 growing girls, was clearly their sanctuary. 3 narrow beds were arranged like spokes of a wheel, each with distinctive bedding that reflected their burgeoning personalities. Chloe's area was meticulously neat and organized, with a small desk piled high with schoolbooks and pencils arranged by size. Maya's corner housed a small gleaming telescope and a carefully cataloged rock collection, each specimen labeled with scientific precision. Lily's space overflowed with stuffed animals and vibrant sketch pads, her creative spirit evident everywhere, a rainbow of colors adorning her walls. Mom let us each decorate our own section, Maya explained, pointing to the walls subtly divided into 3 distinct color schemes, each reflecting their chosen jacket color. She said, even though we look the same, we're not the same inside. That sounds like good advice, I said, carefully taking in every detail of their shared living space, absorbing the wisdom of Olivia's words, a testament to her profound love and understanding of her children. It was clear Olivia had nurtured their individuality, even amidst their shared identity. This is Mom's, Chloe said suddenly, her voice quieter than usual, drawing my attention away from the visual feast of their room. She opened a small wooden box on a shared desk, its surface worn smooth by countless touches. Inside lay a collection of treasures, worn ticket stubs from movies and plays, carefully pressed flowers, a few pieces of simple jewelry, and then a photograph. I recognized it immediately, a sharp pang in my chest, a jolt of shock and recognition. It was me and Olivia, young and laughing, my arm casually, possessively around her shoulders as we stood on the Columbia University campus, autumn leaves scattering at our feet. I remembered the day, perfectly early autumn, the air crisp with the promise of change, Olivia having just learned she'd received a research grant she'd been hoping for, her face alight with triumph. A forgotten memory, now vivid and painful. She kept this, I whispered more to myself than to the girls, my voice thick with emotion, raw with disbelief. All these years, she kept it. She said you were her what-if person, Lily offered softly, her voice barely a whisper, almost ethereal. I looked up, confused, a frown creasing my brow. Her what-if person? Maya repeated, her analytical mind distilling a complex emotion into simple, devastating terms, her eyes fixed on my face as if searching for a reaction. The person who made her wonder what life would have been like if things had been different. The simplicity of the explanation hit me with unexpected, brutal force. I was Olivia's what if, the ghost of a possibility, a path not taken, and in that profound, shattering realization, I knew with gut-wrenching clarity that she had been mine too. All those quiet, lonely moments when my immense success felt hollow, when my achievements felt meaningless, when the vastness of my penthouse felt like a gilded cage, those were my what-if moments, moments of longing for a different life, for her, for them. Do you have a what-if person? Chloe asked, her guard momentarily lowered by the shared moment of vulnerability, her eyes searching mine, seeking reciprocity. It was a rare, naked question from her. I looked at the 3 of them, these perfect, vibrant combinations of myself and Olivia standing before me, living proof of a love I'd discarded. My vision blurred again this time, not from tears of grief for Amelia, but from overwhelming emotion for the life I'd unknowingly abandoned. I did. I admitted, my voice thick with unshed tears. Your mother was mine. The shrill, insistent beep of the oven timer, a mundane sound, mercifully broke the overwhelming emotional tension, saving me from the flood of tears threatening to consume me. As they rushed to check their cookies, their innocent excitement, a jarring contrast to the profound truth just revealed, I remained in their room for a moment. I gently touched the photograph, tracing Olivia's smiling face, then my own younger, more oblivious one before carefully replacing it in the box. A silent promise, unuttered but fiercely felt, formed in my heart. I would stop being their what if. I would become their reality. That night, returning to the sprawling, echoing emptiness of my penthouse, I felt a profound, almost spiritual shift. The city, a glittering mosaic of light, stretched out beneath my floor-to-ceiling windows, a breathtaking testament to my life's work, a landscape I had meticulously shaped through countless investments and developments. This view had always filled me with a deep, quiet satisfaction, a sense of dominion, of power wielded. But tonight it left me feeling profoundly, achingly empty. My vast, silent domain felt less like a monument to ambition and more like a gilded cage. I walked aimlessly through the immaculate space, 5,000 square feet of unparalleled luxury, every surface gleaming, every piece of art precisely placed. But it suddenly felt excessive cold and achingly lonely. The guest rooms, so many of them, had never hosted children, never heard their excited whispers or muffled giggles. The gleaming state-of-the-art kitchen, with its unused surfaces and professional appliances, had never seen small hands making joyful messes, flour dusting the countertops. The vast hallways, usually echoing only my own footsteps, had never resonated with laughter, with the joyful pounding of little feet, running from room to room, chasing dreams or each other. It was a sterile, beautiful tomb. I found myself in my home office, the sanctum of my professional life, surrounded by polished awards, towering stacks of financial reports, and every conceivable piece of evidence of my unparalleled success. But they offered no solace, no answers to the questions now churning inside me. They felt like hollow trophies, symbols of a victory that suddenly seemed utterly insignificant. I opened my laptop, ignoring the blinking notifications from the stock market, my usual morning ritual suddenly irrelevant, and typed "raising triplet girls" into the search bar. Soon I was utterly immersed not in market analysis, but in a New World articles about multiple birth psychology, the profound importance of recognizing individuality in siblings, common developmental challenges faced by triplets. The language was foreign to me, but the information was riveting, drawing me in with a desperate hunger. By morning, my vast mahogany desk, usually pristine, was covered not with financial projections, but with my hurried, almost desperate notes. I had ordered an entire library of books on child development books with titles like The Power of Play and Nurturing Emotional Intelligence. I researched the top-rated schools in the city, meticulously comparing curricula and extracurriculars. I compiled extensive information on ballet programs, art classes, and even competitive youth soccer leagues, imagining Chloe's fierce determination on the field. I even found myself looking into properties, not high-rise luxury apartments, but houses near good school districts in Brooklyn places, with sprawling yards, separate bedrooms for each girl, and ample space for them to grow, to play, to simply be without the constraints of a penthouse. I'd never conceived of such a thing. At dawn, with the first blush of pink staining the eastern sky, painting the Manhattan skyline in soft, hopeful hues, I called Arthur. Arthur. I began, my voice firm, resolute, a tone he usually only heard when I was closing a billion-dollar deal. I need you to clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks. Everything. Except the Collins merger that stays. It's too far along to pull out now, but everything else is secondary. Arthur, accustomed to my demanding nature, but utterly unaccustomed to such a drastic request for personal time off, hesitated. It was a rare, almost unprecedented pause from him. "Sir," he said, his voice laced with uncharacteristic caution, "you have the investor meeting in Boston tomorrow, and the board expects. I've also confirmed the Tokyo delegation's arrival next week, and Miss Davies has scheduled the annual philanthropic gala. Cancel it all." I interrupted, my voice leaving no room for argument, an edge of impatience creeping in. "Delegate it, postpone it, make it happen. And find me someone who knows about children's rooms. Decorators, designers, whatever they're called. I need to understand how to make a home a real home, a welcoming sanctuary that 3 8-year-old girls might someday feel comfortable in. A place they would choose to be Arthur, not just a place they are taken." Of course, Sir Arthur replied, masking his surprise with commendable professionalism. He knew better than to question me when I spoke with such finality. And, shall I arrange another meeting with Miss Hayes and the girls? I stared at the photograph Arthur had given me of the triplets at their ballet recital, Chloe, Maya, and Lily captured in a moment of youthful grace and shared joy. Their bright smiles, Olivia's proud, tired eyes. The memory of Lily's small hand in mine, her whispered, "Thank you for coming," played in my mind. Not yet, I said, a new patience settling over me, a profound quietude I hadn't known I possessed. They need to decide when they're ready. It has to be their choice. In the meantime, I have work to do. This wasn't the work of billions of financial dominance. This was a different kind of work, one that filled me with an unfamiliar sense of purpose. For the first time in my adult life, I, Liam Walker, the man who had always been able to buy anything he desired to command any resource, was preparing for something my immense wealth couldn't simply purchase: the trust, the affection, and the love of three little girls who had every reason to keep their distance, and who unknowingly held the very keys to a future I had never imagined possible, a future that promised true fulfillment. This wasn't just a shift in my schedule. It was a fundamental rebalancing of my entire world, a quiet internal revolution. My focus was no longer solely on stock market numbers, but on the potential for laughter, for shared moments, for the profound, overwhelming joy of building a family. It was a promise to Olivia, to them, and to myself, and I would keep it. The 12 days that followed my vow to prepare my home and rebalance my world felt like an eternity, each tick of the grandfather clock in my silent penthouse, a mocking reminder of time passing without them. I'd plunged myself into the transformation of the East Wing, not just delegating, but actively participating. Architects came and went, sketching plans for custom built-ins and soundproofed rooms. Designers presented swatches of fabric and furniture catalogs, initially suggesting sterile, kid-friendly decor, until I intervened almost fiercely, insisting on spaces that reflected Chloe's fierce intelligence, Maya's boundless curiosity, and Lily's ethereal creativity. "No, no, not that beige," I remember telling a bewildered interior designer, pointing to a swatch of fabric. "Lily likes purples and vibrant greens. She sees the world in color. And Chloe needs a desk built for blueprints, not just homework. Maya, she needs space for her constellations, a night sky ceiling." I found myself researching non-toxic paints and ergonomic children's furniture with the same intensity I'd once applied to evaluating global markets. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and utterly consuming. Child psychologists, a new addition to my professional roster, descended upon my penthouse like benevolent inquisitors, guiding me through the complex terrain of childhood development, and inadvertently my own arrested emotional growth. Every decision felt monumental, every choice imbued with the weight of years I'd missed. 12 days. 12 days of wondering if Sarah would call, if my fervent efforts would ever translate into a bridge for them. 12 days of gnawing doubt, of picturing their faces, their hesitant smiles, and the profound questions in their eyes. Would I ever truly hear from my daughters again outside of a brief supervised visit? Then the phone call finally came. It was Sarah. Liam, her voice usually so measured, held a note of subtle anticipation, a quiet revealing nothing but suggesting everything. "They have a ballet showcase this Saturday." My grip on the phone tightened, a surge of pure, unadulterated adrenaline, not the cold rush of a deal closing, but the hot, trembling thrill of desperate hope. "Lily mentioned that you might want to attend?" Sarah added, her words a direct echo of our last conversation, a subtle acknowledgement of Lily's small, gentle hand in mine, her whispered, "Thank you." Lily said that, I asked, my voice barely a rasp. Hope, raw and tender, bloomed in my chest. "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "Specifically Lily." There was a brief pause, a moment for the unspoken to hang in the air. "Hold on, Liam, I need to be clear. They still don't know who you really are yet. They think you're just an old friend of Olivia's who's recently come back into their lives." The deception still troubled me, a heavy, persistent weight on my conscience. Each interaction, however joyful, felt shadowed by this hidden truth. But I understood the necessity for now. Rushing this, shattering their already fragile world with another seismic shift could destroy everything. "I understand, Sarah," I replied, my voice firm, a silent promise to respect her caution. "And please call me Liam." "Okay, Liam," she said, and I detected a faint, almost imperceptible note of approval in her tone. "Then the showcase starts at 3 p.m. at Parkside Ballet Academy." The address was precise, a lifeline thrown across the chasm, an invitation I would not squander. In the weeks that followed, I embarked on the most challenging yet profoundly rewarding pursuit of my life, cultivating a true meaningful relationship with Chloe, Maya, and Lily. I meticulously attended Chloe's soccer practices, enduring the shouts and chaos of elementary school sports with a newfound patience I hadn't known I possessed. I'd stand on the sidelines, my presence a quiet anchor, cheering her on with a hoarse voice that surprised myself. I listened intently as Maya, with her insatiable curiosity, excitedly recounted her latest scientific discoveries, the intricate life cycle of a butterfly, the physics of a pendulum, or the surprising origins of a new rock she'd added to her meticulously cataloged collection, her bright eyes shining with intellectual fervor. And I spent hours sketching alongside Lily, her artistic soul blossoming on paper, occasionally offering gentle encouragement as she meticulously colored her small hand flying across the page. I learned to differentiate their voices, recognizing the subtle inflections of each, Chloe's decisive tone, Maya's questioning lilt, Lily's soft, almost musical cadence. I discovered their individual passions, their unique quirks, the tiny gestures that define them. Chloe, the natural leader, would often take charge of games, organizing her sisters with surprising authority. Maya would always be the one to ask why, or how does that work, peeling back layers of explanation. Lily, the dreamer, would get lost in her own worlds, drawing intricate patterns or humming soft tunes. And I learned the distinct ways each triplet expressed affection: Chloe, through her quiet, protective gestures; Maya, through shared intellectual interests and serious discussions; Lily, through soft touches and heartfelt whispers. Sometimes, of course, there were small, humbling misunderstandings. One afternoon, still operating on old habits of buying in bulk, I inadvertently bought 3 identical dolls, forgetting Sarah's gentle reminder that they dislike being perceived as a single entity. Chloe's brow furrowed in immediate disapproval, her arms crossing. Maya's lips thinned into a tight, disappointed line. And Lily, the most sensitive, looked at me with a profound sadness that pierced my heart, her lower lip trembling. I quickly apologized, my face flushing hot with embarrassment, feeling like an utter fool, and promised to rectify my mistake, realizing that fatherhood demanded an attention to minute details, a constant learning curve, and a profound respect for each child's unique identity. It wasn't about efficiency or logic. It was about love and understanding. I began to learn how to navigate their complex emotions as they continued to grapple with the profound grief of losing Olivia. There were nights when Lily would wake from nightmares, her small body trembling, and I would sit by her bedside softly humming the lullabies Sarah had taught me, stroking her hair until her breathing evened out. There were afternoons when Chloe, the strong one, would retreat into a sudden, unyielding silence, her small face tight with unspoken pain, and I learned to sit quietly beside her, offering my presence without demanding words, giving her the space she so desperately needed to process her sorrow. Maya, in her own way, would sometimes try to intellectualize her grief, asking questions about death and the afterlife that left me searching for answers I didn't have. Each moment, no matter how seemingly insignificant, was a profound, life-altering lesson. I realized with a clarity that shook me to my core that being a father wasn't just about providing financial security or material comforts, though those were things I could easily give. It was about presence, about profound understanding, about unwavering consistency, and most of all, about unconditional love. I'd spent my entire adult life meticulously building a financial empire, driven by a relentless ambition that had consumed my very being. But now I understood that building this new family, nurturing these 3 precious lives, was my true enduring legacy, my most magnificent achievement. Laughter, a sound rarely heard before, began to echo through the vast, formerly silent rooms of my penthouse as the girls started visiting more frequently, their joy filling the space. The meticulously renovated rooms in the East Wing, once empty and pristine, were now filled with a joyful, chaotic jumble of toys, storybooks, and brightly colored drawings. I felt a profound sense of peace, a deep, quiet contentment I had never known before. I was still Liam Walker, the formidable Wall Street titan, but now I was also a father. A father still learning, still growing, still making mistakes, but most importantly, a father loving and deeply, irrevocably loved in return. The foundation of our fragile bridge was slowly but surely becoming solid ground. The phone call from Sarah came a few months later, punctuated by a cautious, almost reverent silence on her end. I was in my home office reviewing a rather dull acquisition proposal, but the moment her name flashed on the screen, my focus evaporated. Liam, her voice usually so steady, so practical, held a hint of apprehension, a delicate tremble that instantly put me on edge. Chloe asked me a question. My heart instantly began to pound a frantic drum against my ribs, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. I knew with a sickening, dread-filled certainty what was coming. This was it, the moment I had simultaneously yearned for and feared. "What question, Sarah?" I managed my voice tight, clipped barely a whisper. "She asked me why you spend so much time with them," Sarah said, her voice dropping. "When you're not family." The truth, I realized, was now unavoidable. It hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. I had known this moment would eventually arrive. I had dreaded it even. Every sleepless night spent poring over parenting books, every carefully chosen outing, every laugh shared, it all led to this precipice. I had deliberately postponed it, terrified of their reaction, of seeing the fragile trust I had so painstakingly built shatter in their young eyes. I had hoped that the sheer force of the love and consistency I had shown them would be enough a soft landing to soften the inevitable shock of the revelation. But children, I was learning, possessed an unnerving ability to cut straight to the heart of matters, to demand answers with an unwavering clarity that adults often lost. I decided then and there that the time was now. It had to be. I said, my voice hoarse with raw emotion, the words catching in my throat. "I need to tell them, Sarah. I can't keep this secret any longer. It's not fair to them, not to their understanding of their own lives. And it's certainly not fair to Olivia's memory to keep her truth buried." Sarah sighed, a long, weary sound that conveyed both profound understanding and her own deep apprehension. "I thought so," she murmured, a quiet acknowledgement of the inevitable. "Do you want me to be there, please, Sarah?" I pleaded, surprising myself with the raw vulnerability in my voice. It wasn't a request. It was a desperate plea for an ally, for a familiar presence to anchor them through what I knew would be a turbulent moment. "I need your support. They need your presence, your calm, steady presence, more than ever." The conversation was set for a somber Sunday afternoon in my penthouse, a space that, despite all my efforts at transformation, still felt too grand, too imposing for such a delicate revelation. I had meticulously prepared their favorite snacks: Lily's beloved rainbow cookies, Maya's perfectly sliced apples, Chloe's salty pretzels, and their preferred drinks, attempting to create an atmosphere as comfortable and non-threatening as possible, despite the monumental weight hanging in the air. The silence in the hours leading up to their arrival was deafening, punctuated only by the nervous flutter in my own chest. When they finally arrived, ushered in by Arthur, who gave me a sympathetic, knowing glance, Chloe, Maya, and Lily walked into the transformed East Wing. They sat opposite me on the large plush sofa, their faces filled with a mixture of childlike anticipation and mild curiosity, utterly unaware of the life-altering revelation that awaited them. Sarah sat beside me, her hand briefly reassuringly clasping mine beneath the cushions, a silent gesture of support that steadied my trembling nerves, a small anchor in the storm I was about to unleash. I cleared my throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the hushed room. My voice, despite my best efforts, betrayed a slight tremor, a weakness I rarely displayed. "Girls," I began, my gaze sweeping across their innocent faces, committing this moment to memory. "I have something very important to tell you, something I've kept secret for a very long time." I took a deep, fortifying breath, forcing myself to meet each of their eyes, Chloe's watchful, Maya's analytical, and finally Lily's gentle, trusting face. The words felt like lead on my tongue, but I pushed them out raw and unfiltered. "I am your father." Three small faces stared back at me, their innocence replaced in an instant by profound confusion, then disbelief. Chloe's brow furrowed, a thundercloud gathering on her small face. Maya blinked slowly, her mind clearly trying to process the impossible statement. And Lily simply stared, her large eyes wide and unblinking, an innocent canvas now marred by a dawning, terrible understanding. The ensuing silence in the vast room was deafening, suffocating, punctuated only by the frantic, echoing pound of my own heart. It was the longest silence of my life. Then Chloe, ever the leader, ever the one to demand clarity, finally broke it. "You're lying," she stated, her voice small but infused with a fierce, unwavering determination, her face hardening into a defiant mask. "Mom said you lived far away. She never mentioned a father." Her words were like daggers, direct and sharp, each one twisting in my gut. Your mother wrote a letter? I said, my voice thick with emotion, reaching for the crumpled document I had brought, the one Olivia had written so long ago. My hand shook as I unfolded it, the paper whispering like a ghost. I began to read it aloud, each word Olivia's testament, a confession from beyond the grave, explaining her profound reasons for keeping my fatherhood a secret, her immense sacrifice, and the deep enduring love she held for both me and for them. As I read about her choice, her ambition for me, her silent suffering, tears began to stream down Lily's face, silent and unbidden, reflecting the heartbreak in Olivia's words. Maya remained unnervingly quiet, a chilling silence, but her eyes, now glistening with unshed tears, were fixed on me with a raw pain, her small fingers clutching at her knees. Chloe, the brave protector, still maintained her stoic composure, but her lower lip began to tremble almost imperceptibly, a hairline crack in her facade. Why did Mom hide us? Maya finally asked, her voice cracking a tiny, heart-wrenching sound that tore at my heart. It was the question I had dreaded most. She loved you very much, girls, I said, my own voice hoarse thick with my own unshed tears. More than anything in the world. She wanted me to pursue my dreams, my ambitions, without feeling bound, without feeling like I had to choose between my career and a family I didn't even know existed. It was an incredibly difficult decision for her, the biggest sacrifice she ever made. She chose to give me that freedom, even if it meant she had to carry the burden alone, to raise you her 3 miracles without my help. I recounted as honestly and gently as possible the brief but passionate history of my relationship with Olivia, the whirlwind romance, the painful departure, the lost years that followed. I laid bare my profound regret, the agonizing emptiness I had felt before they entered my life, the deep void Amelia and I had both experienced. I didn't sugarcoat my past selfishness, my blindness. I allowed myself to be vulnerable, to show them the depth of my remorse. Sarah, ever the pillar of support, ever the voice of reason and calm, interjected, confirming my story with her own quiet words, adding her own layer of credibility to the unfathomable truth. Your mother did what she thought was best, girls. Sarah said, her hand reaching out to touch Lily's arm, then Maya's, then Chloe's. She was a strong, independent woman. And Liam is here now, Chloe, because he loves you. He has changed his entire life for you because he wants to be the father you deserve. Lily, sobbing openly now, her small body trembling, rushed forward and threw her small arms around me, burying her face in my chest, her tiny sobs echoing in the vast room. You're our daddy, she whispered, the words echoing in my soul, a balm to my aching heart. Chloe and Maya remained cautiously distant, still processing, still guarded, but the rigid defiance in their eyes had softened, replaced by a fragile understanding, a dawning hope. The conversation continued for hours, a tumultuous mix of raw questions, bitter tears, honest answers, and tentative embraces. It was messy, painful, but profoundly real. Finally, as the last vestiges of daylight faded from the sky and Sarah prepared to take them home, Chloe looked at me, her gaze steady, searching my eyes with a new hesitant vulnerability. Will you stay? She asked, her voice small, a hopeful plea that pierced me to my core. I'll be here forever, my daughters, I replied, my voice choked with emotion, thick with unshed tears of my own. My heart, once a cold, impenetrable fortress, was overflowing with a joy and relief I had never dared to dream possible. The truth was out, and the bridge, fragile as it was, had been crossed. We were finally a family. The weeks that followed the truth's revelation were a period of intense, almost dizzying transition. The raw, unfiltered emotions from that Sunday afternoon in my penthouse slowly began to settle, replaced by something fragile, yet deeply resilient. Chloe, Maya, and Lily, each in their own distinct way, began to embrace me. It wasn't a sudden fairy tale transformation, but a slow, deliberate unfolding like petals unfurling in the sun. Lily, with her open heart and boundless capacity for affection, was the first to fully cross the threshold. Daddy, she'd whisper, clutching my hand as we walked, or lean into my side during a movie. That single word, so small, so simple, resonated deep within my soul, a quiet symphony bringing warmth and a profound sense of rightness each time I heard it. It wasn't just a title. It was a feeling, a deep-seated connection that resonated with every fiber of my being. Her trust, given so freely, humbled me. Maya, ever the analytical one, processed the truth with a thoughtful intensity. She began to ask deeper, more complex questions about my past, with Olivia seeking to understand the full narrative, piecing together the fragments of our shared history like an intricate puzzle. She wanted to know everything: what Olivia was like in college, what dreams she had, how our paths diverged. I answered her patiently, honestly, painting a picture of Olivia as the brilliant, passionate woman she was weaving in my own regrets without self-pity. Maya's questions were her way of building a new foundation, one based on understanding and acceptance. Chloe, the formidable protector, still maintained a slight reserve, a watchful quality in her eyes, especially when I was with her sisters. Her default setting was caution, her loyalty to Olivia absolute. But her actions, her subtle gestures, a less rigid stance when I entered a room, a shared glance that held a flicker of amusement, the way she'd sometimes let her hand brush mine, betrayed a growing trust, a slow softening of her protective shell. It was hard-won, that trust, and precious beyond measure. She was always the last to warm, but when she did, it felt like the greatest victory. The decision for them to move into my penthouse was not immediate. Sarah Hayes, a true guardian angel throughout this bewildering journey, was instrumental. She handled every logistical detail, every emotional nuance, doing an exceptional job, helping the girls adapt to this monumental change. We had countless discussions, long conversations late into the night about their needs, their fears, ensuring they had a voice in every decision. They helped pick out new furniture, chose paint colors, and even debated the layout of their shared play areas. My entire East Wing, once a sterile, meticulously designed space, was transformed. It became a vibrant, warm, and inviting sanctuary. Each girl had her own private bedroom decorated precisely to their unique personalities. Chloe's room was a haven of organization, with towering bookshelves filled with adventure stories and a dedicated study area for her burgeoning academic pursuits. Maya's corner boasted a gleaming telescope and a carefully curated collection of scientific models and specimens, her mind already reaching for the stars. Lily's space overflowed with easels, paints, and a riot of colorful, expressive drawings, a testament to her blossoming artistic soul. My penthouse, once a cold, sterile monument to solitary ambition, was no longer just an apartment. It was a home brimming with laughter, the joyous thud of running footsteps, the occasional dramatic squabble, and the delightful, chaotic messiness of childhood. My life, once dictated by market hours and quarterly reports, had fundamentally, irrevocably changed. The relentless pursuit of the next deal, the endless meetings, the late-night calls to Asia, they hadn't vanished entirely, but their significance had diminished. Evening meetings were now routinely replaced by cherished bedtime stories, my voice, once accustomed to commanding boardrooms, now softened to a gentle lullaby for Lily, or an animated retelling of Greek myths for Maya, or a thrilling chapter from an adventure book for Chloe. Lonely, silent dinners gave way to boisterous, joyful meals shared with my 3 daughters, their chatter and laughter filling the formerly empty dining room, a symphony of family. I still ran my vast business empire, yes, but now work was merely a part of my life, not its entirety, not its sole definition. I learned to cook simple, comforting meals, a skill I'd never imagined acquiring. My first attempts at pancakes were disastrous, but the girls' laughter, loud and uninhibited, was worth every burnt batter. I patiently helped them with their homework, painstakingly deciphering modern math problems that made my Wall Street calculus seem simple. And even to my endless surprise, I mastered the art of braiding Chloe, Maya, and Lily's hair before school, my large, once clumsy fingers becoming surprisingly nimble. I drove them to school, to their ballet classes, to the local park, and dedicated entire weekend afternoons to exploring New York City with them, discovering its hidden gems through their innocent, curious eyes, places I'd never even noticed in my relentless, blinkered pursuit of wealth. Central Park became a wonderland, the museums living classrooms, the city a vast playground. There were countless moments when the profound meaning of this new life washed over me, a wave of overwhelming emotion. One quiet evening, after the girls had finally fallen asleep, their rooms glowing softly with nightlights, I would walk through their doors, pausing to look at their innocent, peaceful faces. In those moments, I felt an overwhelming, almost suffocating love, a visceral connection that transcended anything I had ever thought myself capable of experiencing. It was a love that healed, that fulfilled, that made sense of everything. Another time, Chloe, still prone to bursts of spontaneity, accidentally called me daddy in front of one of my most formidable business partners during a casual weekend outing at a charity baseball game. Instead of embarrassment, instead of the carefully constructed facade of the CEO, I felt an overwhelming wave of pride, a warm glow spreading through my chest, a quiet, fierce joy. These were the moments that truly defined my new existence, the real dividends of my life. Sarah Hayes remained an integral and cherished part of our lives, a constant, loving presence. She wasn't just an aunt. She was a true co-parent in spirit, a dear friend, and a trusted confidant. She visited frequently, her quiet strength and wisdom helping both me and the girls navigate the intricacies of our new family dynamic. We often sat together, especially on Olivia's birthday or other significant dates, sharing stories of Olivia, ensuring that the girls' memories of their incredible mother remained vivid and cherished, even as we built new memories with their newfound father. It was a way of honoring Olivia, of keeping her spirit alive in the home she never knew. The story concludes with an image of me, Liam Walker, no longer the solitary, driven businessman, defined solely by his work, by the cold precision of finance. My life, once barren in its opulent perfection, was now rich, vibrant, and messy in the most wonderful way. I had found a family, a purpose, and a love that transcended anything I'd ever dared to dream possible. My three brilliant, beautiful daughters, Chloe, Maya, and Lily, had finally found the father they never knew they had. And together in our bustling, laughter-filled home in Brooklyn, we were forging a vibrant, noisy, and wonderfully complete future, brimming with boundless new hopes, unwavering love, and the joyful promise of every single tomorrow. You know, if someone had told me 10 years ago that my life would circle back to three little girls with my eyes and her fire, I would have laughed. Or run. Probably both. But life has this wild way of humbling you, not with thunder and lightning, but with quiet moments. A child's drawing, a hand held in silence, a voice that calls you dad, even though you're still learning what that means. What I've learned painfully beautifully is this: you don't always get to start when everyone else does. But that doesn't mean you can't show up now. We lose time, to fear, to pride, to the belief that it's too late. But people, especially children, don't need perfection. They need presence. They need truth. They need to see that even if you arrive late, you still arrive with your whole heart. Maybe you're watching this with your own unfinished stories. Maybe there's someone you're scared to reach out to, a child you don't know how to talk to, a past you're not proud of. So let me ask you, what are you waiting for? Because sometimes the most powerful healing doesn't come from erasing the past, but from writing the rest of the story better. I didn't fix everything. I didn't walk into their lives as a hero, but I walked in and I stayed. And maybe that's enough. Let's talk about it. Has life ever handed you a second chance, and what did you do with it? Do you think it's ever too late to make things right? If this story made you reflect, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. The next chapter might just be yours.